Hey everybody, it's Michael from Wahoo Comics here with another comic investing video where I share some investing tips and then show off some books that demonstrate those tips in action. And before we get to today's topic, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, of course I'd appreciate if you'd consider doing so, and it would encourage me to make a lot more of these videos. And so today we're going to be talking about the concept of buying the dip and some of its pros and cons. So first of all, we should ask, well, what is buying the dip? Well, this refers to a strategy where an investor looks to buy an asset that is on an upward trend when it has a pullback or a dip in price, with the belief that that asset is eventually over time going to recover its value and then continue its upward trend. And of course, the biggest pro to that strategy is that you have the opportunity to find some incredible entry points when buying assets. And as I talked about in the video a couple months ago, entry points are a key to being a good investor. And I'll put that video in the description below. Go check it out if you haven't. And so, of course, any asset that's going up in value over time isn't just on a straight trajectory of growth. It functions more like a wave. It goes up and down, but long term on the way up, but it has these peaks and valleys. And so as an investor, ideally, you want to time your purchase of that asset when it's in the middle of one of those valleys. Because if you do, then of course you're going to have a greater return on investment than if you buy the asset when it's near its peak. Now, if the asset is going up and continues to go up, whichever place you buy at, it's something you're going to get a return on your investment for. But of course, if you buy it down here instead of up here, that return on investment is just going to be much greater. And so again, ideally, you're buying down here. But there's also some cons to this strategy. First of all, if you're waiting to buy the dip, you run the risk that the book, especially when it comes to comics or whatever asset it is, doesn't actually dip. And so maybe there's this comic that you really believe in, that you want, and you see it on eBay for $200, but you think, I really want this, but I really think it's going to dip. And so I'm going to wait 6 months, and I think I'll be able to get it at $150 then. And unfortunately, 6 months later, it's actually gone up in value to $250 or to $300, the next year. And so you actually end up having a worse entry point if you end up buying it because you waited on this dip that never came. And I experienced that to a small degree a couple of years ago when it came to investing in the stock market during kind of the aftermath of COVID first coming into our world. So of course, if you're paying attention a couple of years ago, the stock market went way down, and it was clear to me that it was dipping and that it would recover. And so I put some money into it, but I held back some because I thought it was going to dip even further. And unfortunately for me, good news for the economy, the stock market actually recovered much more quickly than I thought it was. And so I missed an opportunity to invest even more of my money down here. And so missed, again, a good opportunity to have a better return on my investment. And so sometimes, when you're waiting on the dip, you just miss good buying opportunities in the pursuit of great buying opportunities. And of course, you're never going to be able to time the very bottom of the valley. You're not going to know where it's at. You're going to buy either while it's still going down or on the way up, but you don't know. And so you just got to do your best to find somewhere in that valley to buy at. And another big con with buying the dip, however, is that you may think an asset like a comic book is dipping, but maybe it's actually on a downtrend. And so, there's a comic that was 200 and then you see it at 150 and you're like, oh wow, this is a great opportunity to buy because I think 6 months from now it's going to be back up to 200. But what if it actually continues to drop and it goes to 100 and then to 50? and then obviously you have a negative return on your investment. And for any investor, it's really difficult to tell when there's a drop in price if that is a temporary drop or if it's a warning signal that this asset is just going to continue to fall in price. And there's lots of people who've lost everything in the stock market because they invested in stocks that seemed to be dipping but really ended up being nothing. The companies went under that they invested in. And I think one of the good things about comic investing is I think it's a little safer. I think it's pretty rare that a book, especially if you're looking at blue chip books, which when you're investing, I personally think those are ones that I'm looking to buy, ones that have, if you saw my video on the Lindy effect, that have had a proven track record. If you're buying those books, it's unlikely that, we'll say Journey into Mystery 83, first appearance of Thor, that it's just going to crash to zero. Now, there's definitely a real potential that it could go lower than it is now and stay there for a long time. I don't think it will, but it could. But as long as anybody cares about comics at all, people will care about that book, and it will retain a good amount of its value. And so comics can, in some ways, be a safer investment than the stock market in that way. But still, there may be a comic you think is dipping, but it's actually in a downtrend. And so, of course, you want to avoid that, and you want to, when you're thinking about your purchasing decisions, when you see a comic dropping in price, you want to kind of think about, okay, is this dipping or is it on the downtrend? And there's a lot of ways to, maybe think about how you can figure out the answer to that question. But there's two things that I look at that make me think a comic on the decline might just be in a dip rather than a long-term downtrend. The first is if that comic had had a spike in its price because of some special interest, and that interest is kind of now done, and so it's gone down. But there's reason to believe interest in that book will rise again and increase the demand, and it'll go back up eventually. And so what I mean by that is, like, for instance, this year, of course, we've had the Moon Knight TV series, the Doctor Strange movie, the Thor movie coming up. And so keys for all of those characters over the past year have gone way high, reached all-time highs. But now you're already seeing with the Moon Knight and soon with Doctor Strange and eventually with Thor, as those shows and movies come to an end, that people lose interest in those characters and move on to the next thing. And so there's less demand for those books, and then of course sellers have to start dropping prices because there's less demand, and those books drop. But especially with characters like those, there's reason to believe that, okay, maybe they're out of the MCU for now, but 2 or 3 years from now there will hopefully be another Moon Knight property or Doctor Strange property, or just that these are iconic characters that people are going to still care about even if the movie's over. There's reason to believe that those books will go up in value again. And so there's a book that was just hot and this down. That's a book I'm going to target because I think it'll eventually climb back up. And something you really want to look at when it comes to that and some of these bigger keys, the new low that's established, is it higher than the previous low? And that's a good sign that you're on a dip rather than an ongoing downward trend. Obviously there's waves, and if the new lows are higher than the previous lows, then you're generally going to be in good shape. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for. Another thing that I'm going to be looking for is asking, in general, are we kind of in an economic downturn overall as a nation? Are we entering or close to a recession? Which a recession is where there's a significant decline in economic activity that's spread across the economy. And that it can be triggered by different things, financial uncertainty that comes with certain things that we have going on now, like inflation. There are lots of factors. That I'm not going to get into now that can lead to a recession. But when you see all kind of investments going down, which we are seeing now, the Dow Jones is down, Bitcoin is down, comics are down. It's a sign that, hey, maybe there's not really a long-term downtrend on this comic, but just everything's down now. And there's reason to believe that, okay, eventually the economy is going to recover and then people will be buying those books again. And I do think we're on the precipice of a recession. I don't know. I hope not, but I think we're there because of rising gas prices, all those kinds of things, and so that stinks. But the flip side of that is I think it's going to present some great buying opportunities in the next few months. And so if there's been a key that you've been looking for a long time, I think second half of this year, maybe even longer, will be good times to start looking at those keys. So hopefully all that made sense, and it brings me to a book that I want to show you that I recently picked up that I'm really excited about, and it's this one, Avengers number 48, which contains the first appearance of Dane Whitman as the Black Knight, and of course his first cover appearance. Now, I'm really excited about this book for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm just a huge fan of this character that I've talked about in previous videos, how when I first started reading comics, he was a part of the Avengers and eventually became their leader. And so I've always had a fondness for that character. But secondly, as an investment, I believe this book is in a dip. So if you've been paying attention to the trajectory of this book, about a year ago, this book was going crazy in value because Dane Whitman was known to be coming in the Eternals movie, and so people are really excited about that, and we're buying this book and breaking records. Well, then the movie came out, and I'll give a couple of spoilers. It's been a while, but fast forward 2 minutes if you don't want to hear these. First of all, Dane Whitman never actually became the Black Knight. And secondly, the movie just wasn't successful compared to other Marvel movies. And so interest in this book has been on a decline. And so this book has dipped quite a bit in price since last year because of that. But I think there's a lot of reasons to believe in this book in the long term. First of all, again, spoilers, but the movie gave a clear indication that there's a future for this character in the MCU, that this character, I think it was pretty strongly hinting at, will eventually become the Black Knight. And when that happens, I think this book will go up, right back in value. And we do know the actor Kit Harington has signed up to like 5 more movies I think that he'll be in. So I think there's a lot of life in that character in the MCU, which means a lot of life in this book, in my opinion. Now, I picked up this book at a good price, and I got it from the same seller that I bought a few months ago. If you watched a video where I picked up a bunch of huge Avengers keys, and I'm long-term trying to put together an Avengers run. His brother put together this beautiful Avengers collection, and I've been buying some of his keys over time. And so this was the one I really, almost pulled the trigger on a couple months ago and didn't. But the good thing is he didn't sell it, and then he's willing to negotiate even more. So I got it at a really good price, I think. But also picked up some more Avengers keys. This is definitely the biggest, but I'll go ahead and show you these other books that I picked up. Avengers number 13. It's just an early Avengers book, but it is a key because it contains the first appearance of Count Nefaria, who's not really a character I'm investing in, but again, I got it at a good deal. Here's a book I'm really excited about, Avengers number 43. I'm excited because I think this book may be on a dip. Of course, this character was in the Black Widow, and I think there's a possibility, I'm not as certain as I am with the Black Knight, that he has a future in the MCU. But I personally just loved that character. I love David Harbour as an actor, but I especially loved the character in the movie. I didn't care about this character at all before Black Widow, and fell in love with him in the movie because he is part of a question the movie asks, and I don't go too much on a tangent of asking, what does it mean to be a family? What does it mean to be a father? And those are questions that I really ask myself. As I've mentioned, I have a bunch of kids, and I'm always asking, what is it? What is a good dad? What is a dad? And that question is asked in that movie, and I love how David Harbour answers it. And also got Avengers 54, which is the first cameo appearance of Ultron, another awesome villain, and 55, which is his first full appearance. And of course, Ultron's already had his big moment in the MCU, so I don't know how big of a feature he has. If you saw What If, I mean, they can bring in the multiverse Ultrons, into the picture, which they may continue to do. But regardless, I think it's such a classic character that this book will just see steady growth over time. And so super happy to add it to my collection. Obviously, as an Avengers fan, one of their biggest all-time villains. And then one more Avengers key I got was one of the ugliest covers of all time, Avengers Annual number 10. But it contains the first appearance of Rogue, who I do believe have a future in the MCU as the X-Men are coming. And of course, we don't know which ones will be there, but Rogue is super popular, and I think she will be in some capacity. And so it's a book I've wanted for a while, and I was glad to get a good deal on it. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up here, but first of all, I want to hear in the comments, what is a book that you think is on the dip right now that I or others should consider investing in? Is there something you're targeting and waiting for it to go down, or that already has gone down and that you think is a good one to buy now? Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate if you would consider doing so. Like, comment, all those things. Hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it, and look forward to the next one.